Hello and welcome into another edition of the Arizona State Sun Devils Insider Podcast. My name is Kevin Hickson. I am your lead beat writer for the Arizona State Sun Devils on SI. And I'm so grateful to be joined once again by my great colleague Tanner Capolini. And we are here to discuss a special day in regards to the 2026 Arizona State football season as the bulk of the Big 12 schedule has been revealed in terms of placing dates on the opponent. We already went into this knowing the first 3 weeks of the season and how they were going to stack up. We knew about the London game in the Big 12 opener against Kansas on September 19th, as well as Morgan State, which is the season opener on September 5th, and Texas A&M in a major SEC Big 12 clash on September 12th. Now we know the rest of the schedule, and Tanner, it's a very intriguing schedule. First off, how are you doing today, and what are your first thoughts on this schedule?
Hey Kevin, it's nice to be back. I'm doing good. Been
Great to have
enjoying
you.
the portal with college football, and then I think the NFL playoffs as well have been very intriguing. So, been enjoying football, been enjoying the new year overall. So two kind of thoughts came to mind when looking at the ASU football schedule. The first one is that there's a lot of good variety with this. Like I said, you play Hawaii this year, which I think is a fun game. There's a London game. There's like kind of more unique stuff here with the schedule. There's some kind of fun variety. You still have your Big 12 teams, but you have some different ones. Like you have Oklahoma State, you have UCF, which ASU didn't play last year. Um, Kansas State. So I like the variety. I like how they mix it up, and I think getting to play in London is cool. But that kind of brings me to my second point: is that I think this is a very tough start to the schedule because with ASU, well, the transfer portal, a lot has happened. A lot is changing. New players coming in and out, and you begin hosting Morgan State. Okay, you should win that, but then you go ahead, you go at Texas A&M. That's going to be a really difficult game. They're a really good team in that stadium. I mean, that's going to be tough. And then you go ahead and you play Kansas, and I would say, okay, yeah, you can win that game, but you're playing them in London, and we have seen in the NFL when teams go to London, that just can really throw them off. And then you play Baylor at home, and Baylor, I just think they're a tough opponent. And I think this is more of a tough schedule, which is interesting because a lot of fans were on social media were very happy. A lot of them saying, "Hey, we're going undefeated. We're gonna win the Big 12," and I love the optimism. But yeah, I mean, there's not a break because after Baylor, you have Hawaii. Okay, you should win that, but then you go at Texas Tech versus Kansas at BYU. BYU, I think, is going to be a tough game. Versus Colorado, I think you can win that. At UCF, you maybe win, but again, you're traveling, and then versus Oklahoma, and then you're at Arizona. So it's just a very tough schedule. I felt like last year, yeah, there were some tough games, but there were some easy stretches here. I think this is a schedule where there's really no breaking it at all for ASU.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the tougher schedules that we've seen in recent years for the Sun Devils. I mean, obviously Texas A&M on the front half of the schedule makes it exponentially tougher since they just reached the college football playoff. It's a road game. It's right before you make a trip to London. But on the flip side of that, I think that playing a team like Texas A&M is going to prepare the Sun Devils for Big 12 play because A&M is one of those. I mean, we saw that last season. A&M's front seven extremely stacked, very physical. Uh, Prepares you for teams like A&M, like Texas Tech, like BYU. Uh, which leads me into one of my other rapid fire reactions about this. I mean, we went into this knowing who they were going to play at home and on the road. Uh, and I think people already knew that Arizona State was going to have their toughest games this season, this upcoming season on the road. I mean, A&M, Texas Tech, BYU, Arizona, all teams that finished the season ranked, all teams that were contending for well, Arizona wasn't contending for the Big 12 title, but they were on the doorstep of competing for the title. if they hadn't lost a couple of close games earlier in last season. Um, I think that since we knew who they were playing at home and on the road, I think that the sequencing was a lot more important on the schedule. And I think the Big 12 did them a little bit of a favor by, I mean, obviously giving them the bye in between the London week and Baylor, but also having the home and away games basically alternating one for one. They don't play a single stretch of games consecutively on the road outside of the A&M and London games. Uh, they Baylor is a tough opponent, but they have a lot more unknowns going into the season than ASU does, I think. I mean, they did get DJ Lagway in the portal, which he's an intriguing prospect. I think that he still has a lot of talent, but the roster's a lot more in limbo, I'd say, after a 5-7 season. Dave Aranda's really struggled the last couple of years. I think that that should be a win at home. I mean, we have a long way to go between now and the beginning of the season. A lot can change. But as of right now, I think that that Kansas Baylor Hawaii stretch looks fairly reasonable for the Sun Devils. And then I think that the 3 game stretch between October 17th and Halloween, that's going to be the stretch that really defines their season. Texas Tech and BYU, we all know were the two teams that represented the Big 12 in the conference title game last season. Uh, they're really the two teams that Arizona State has been jockeying with for control of the Big 12 to be one of the upper tier teams in the conference. And the fact that they're playing both of those games on the road is a pretty daunting task. But I do believe in Kenny Dillingham's ability to have his team ready to go in those games. And then Kansas State in between that, I think that they are very motivated to have a bounce back season because their 6-6 season last season was really categorized as a disappointment from top to bottom. And I think they're going to come into 2026 season really with a chip on their shoulder. So that's going to be a stretch that intrigues me a lot. And yeah, we'll talk about the last few games of the schedule in a minute, but just give me your thoughts on that stretch from Texas Tech to BYU.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. And the one thing is, I'll kind of go big picture and then go small picture. Is that I feel like this year, ASU, they're going to have more tough defenses and offenses. It felt like last year when I was writing, it felt like it was a lot of good offenses ASU was going against. And yeah, there were some good defenses, but this is almost a flip where there's a lot of great defenses here. I think Texas A&M is going to be tough there. I feel like Baylor always kind of plays tough physical defense. Texas Tech kind of the same way. Colorado has Deion Sanders, who's from a defensive background. BYU kind of that way. That's just something that kind of stands out more. I think a lot of the teams ASU faces, they have new quarterbacks, like you said, Baylor with DJ Lagway coming in. So I think Brian Ward's defense could have a really good season, but this offense is just going to be really interesting to see. And I really think that Texas Tech, Kansas State, BYU stretch, I do wonder, and I do want to bring something up here, if that I'm interested to see how this ASU quarterback battle plays out. You have Cutter Boley coming in, and you have Mikey Keene, and whoever wins, I wonder if they're struggling, does maybe ASU make a change during that stretch? I think, like you said, that stretch is really going to define this team, that Texas Tech, Kansas State. I think that Kansas State game could be kind of probably the most important game. It's home. Could be a possible trap game here, right? Because I think if you lose to Texas Tech on the road, it's like, well, okay, that's unfortunate, but it's a tough stadium. Okay, and I think losing to BYU on the road, kind of the same thing. I think though, if you lose to Kansas State, it'll be your second Big 12 game or your third Big 12 game at home. I don't know. I think that could be really big. It's October 24th. That's kind of almost sort of the midpoint of this season. So, yeah, I think that's going to be the big game here that, ASU has to win. I think overall with this stretch is going to be a good test for this team. And I think though that's how Kenny Dillingham would want it. He is someone who has really talked about wanting the competition, wanting this team to prove itself, and he's really confident in the unit. And I think that this season will be a good test of that, and especially that stretch. I think one thing with ASU is that last year, I thought that they played the Big 12 pretty well overall. They had some losses, but there's a lot of good wins. You talk about the Texas Tech win, the TCU win, the Baylor win. This team shows that they can compete in the Big 12. And that's kind of what this stretch reminds me of, the Texas Tech, the BYU, where last year we had like TCU, Baylor, kind of that tough stretch. So yeah, I think that'll be very defining of how this team's season goes.
I think that that's a great observation, Tanner. And um, that kind of leads me into talking about the back half of the schedule, since we kind of talked about the pretty much the mean of the schedule, the very middle. The main thing that caught my attention over the last month of the season or so, this November stretch, was that pretty much every single game you're going to be playing against either a quarterback that's very, very talented and has great pedigree, or a quarterback that's very, very accomplished. We talked about Colorado briefly. Um, Deion Sanders will have Julian Lewis back for his redshirt freshman season, and we saw Julian Lewis flash quite a bit against Arizona State in their game in last November. Um, that could be an interesting game because we know the last time Colorado came to Tempe, Colorado came out on top with Shedeur Sanders at quarterback. It was a 27-24 game. I'm not expecting Colorado to be a phenomenal team, but I think they will be improved from the 2025 season. Then you go to the UCF game. They just picked up a commitment a couple of weeks ago from former James Madison quarterback Alonzo Barnett, who is a very accomplished quarterback. He started the last two seasons at James Madison. I believe he accounted for about 38 touchdowns last season. That will be an intriguing game because UCF was on the doorstep of reaching a bowl game last season under Scott Frost with a lot of quarterback concerns, and now they have their guy officially. Oklahoma State's going to have Drew Mestemaker, who really lit the college football world on fire in 2025. I believe he threw for about 35 touchdowns and well over 4,000 yards. He was considered one of the 10 best players in the transfer portal. Eric Morris, in general, brought a lot of his North Texas guys up to Stillwater to play for him. And I believe that they have around the top five transfer portal class right now. So that could be a team that really has potential to go from worst to top half of the Big 12. That could be a challenge out of nowhere. And then Arizona, Noah Fafita, Arizona State fans know Noah Fafita all too well. He's had two awesome games against the Sun Devils out of the last three seasons. He's been the starter. He's the all-time leading passing touchdowns leader for the Wildcats. And that might be the last game of his career, depending on what happens for the Wildcats this next season. So, um, Tanner, what are your thoughts about the last stretch of games they have in the November part of the schedule?
Yeah, I like the points you brought up. I'm gonna be real. I did not know that some of those teams got some of the quarterbacks in the transfer portal. So that kind of revises my point a bit earlier that there still is a lot of good offense. I think like kind of the first half is more defensive focus, maybe the second half is more offensive focus. But yeah, I think it's I like kind of I like the flip how you have after BYU, it's home away, home away. I kind of like how that goes, that um, ASU does not have any consecutive road games this season, so that's a nice factor to kind of bring that in here. And you do get back to back. You have three home games technically if Kansas, Baylor, Hawaii, no, but Kansas is um, in London and still counts as a home game. But yeah, I do like the ending stretch, and I'm really excited. I think that Oklahoma game could be Oklahoma State could be kind of a challenging game. I feel like they're a team that always kind of plays just kind of hard football. I don't know. I feel like that game could be very interesting at home. How does that go? I think the Arizona ASU game is going to be huge this year. Like you said, Noah Fafita, I think is going to be someone that has his eyes set on the NFL draft next year. So this could be his last game. And, once to boost his draft stock is sometimes the way people finish off their college football career can kind of determine their draft stock here as well. I'm also excited for at UCF. I think that game could be very intriguing at Florida with the weather, with the climate. How does that go here? I don't know. I'm just excited for that. I've always kind of, I wouldn't call myself a UCF fan, but I've always kind of found that school intriguing, and I think going there is kind of cool. And I'm just kind of excited for this schedule. Last year, ASU had a lot of Texas teams. They had what, five Texas teams on the schedule, and it's nice to just see variety here. Like I mentioned, playing Hawaii at Florida in London, it's just a lot more kind of going around and stuff. I just think that's exciting from a storyline perspective here. I did want to kind of move into kind of predictions of the schedule. I think this is going to be a tough year for ASU. Like we mentioned, there's a couple of really good teams that they play. I see this as a 6, 7, 8 win team. Um, I just think a lot of it is going to be that you have these new players coming in, and it's going to take, there's no preseason. So the first, team this or the first game these guys play is going to be Morgan State. Okay, I think you win that, but then you go to Texas A&M in week 2, and I think it's just going to be a tough schedule overall. I guess kind of my question is, what are expectations? Like if this is a 5, 6 year 5, 6 win season, how do you feel about it? And for me, it would be like fine because this is a lot of new players coming in. But I don't know, where do you stand on that, Kevin? Do you think kind of where are the expectations? Like last year for ASU was like, hey, this team could win the Big 12. This year seems like kind of more of a rebuilding, reloading the roster. You're getting, new players coming in.
That's a good question, Tanner. I think the expectations are still pretty high at the moment. I think that they do believe that they do have a contender in the Big 12 on a yearly basis, no matter what the roster looks like. I mean, like you said, there's a lot to figure out. Uh, as we've seen with Kenny Gillingham's Arizona State culture, there's really no spots that are guaranteed for players to start at. Uh, I mean, even Sam Levitt, when he came to ASU in 2024, he had to compete with Jeff Sims for the starting job. Had the job going into 2025, but that was because of his own merit. It wasn't because it was handed to him. Uh, there's going to like quarterback's going to be a big battle, like you said. Uh, we're going to figure out the hierarchy of the wide receiver room after they brought in Omarion Miller and Reed Harris, along with the guys they brought back. We're going to figure out a lot about tight end, offensive line, defensive line, even secondary. I mean, I feel like most positions are up for grabs, but I think that the transfer portal class they brought in is top 15 in the country for a reason. They brought in a lot of guys that have proven themselves elsewhere, whether it's at the high major competition level or mid major, and they're ready to translate their games to the high major. Um, I think that even though you look at the quarterback situation and go like, oh, it's not Sam Levitt, it's doom and gloom. I think that Jeff Sims over the last stretch of the season proved that it's not necessarily the personnel at the quarterback position. It's what Kenny Dillingham and Marcus Arroyo have really built up culture-wise, schematically, all of that. And I think that nobody's denying the talent that Cutter Boley has. And I think that Kenny Dillingham might be the best possible uh, coach for him to really hone in terms of his mechanics, his processing, all of that stuff. I think that this Arizona State team, believe it or not, might be as talented as last season's team when we go into the first game. There's still a lot to be worked out, like I said, and we're going to be following spring practices pretty closely to see how players develop, how positions are shaking out in the spring months. But I wouldn't put it past them to get back to the 10 win mark again because I think you look at 2025 and they're a little bit of better health away from a 10 win season. They're a couple of bounces away from a 10 win season. and they were competing for the Big 12 title in the last week of the regular season, even with everything that was stacked against them. And we can't predict what will be stacked against them in 2026. But I think as long as Kenny Dillingham is around, I feel like the 7 win barrier, the 6, 7 win barrier is really a doomsday scenario. I think that that's something that we're not going to see very much of, but we shall see how things progress. I still, like I said, I still have complete faith in the coaching staff. I think that the fact that pretty much nobody departed, the fact that Dillingham had more money to use on his coaching staff to retain them, not only retain them, but promote Brian Carrington to keep him around and hire a new cornerbacks coach. I think that those are signs that this is sustainable, what's being built in Tempe. And I'm very excited to see what the 2026 Sun Devils really bring to the table.
Yeah, I wanted to say one thing here before we end it off. I don't want to come off like I'm some hater of the Sun Devils. I'm just saying it's more so I have faith in Dillingham and the coaching staff. It's just sometimes a lot of new can sometimes take a while to kind of gel together. And I think this is just a tough schedule. So if this team goes and it wins 10 games, awesome. I love it. I could definitely see. And I think a lot of the thing with this team is there's a lot of potential, like you said. I think that's a perfect way to put it, where it's like Cutter Boley or Mikey Keene, whoever they start, they could play really well. I could see Cutter Boley if he starts being a Heisman candidate. I could also see things maybe being a bit rusty. It just depends. And can we get things kind of getting going. I like a lot of the transfers they made defensively. I have a lot of faith in this defense with Brian Ward. I love Ashton Stamps coming in from LSU, Owen Long, the linebacker. We'll touch on that in future episodes, but I like the defense a lot. I'm just interested to see where this offense goes. And I think for me, also too, last year I like Marcus Arroyo. I thought though there's some things that could have been better, but you still have a really good running game. You still have a really excellent receiving room. I think landing Amarian Miller was big after losing Jordan Tyson to the NFL draft. So overall, I come in with a lot of potential. I guess one kind of my point is, like, if ASU has an okay season, that's not the end of things. Kenny Dillingham is going to be from years to come, and it just might be a bit of a tough season. And I think next year they'll be really good. But who knows? They could be really good next year or this year, and I would love to see it. I'm just saying, I would probably go 7, 8 wins, maybe 9, but yeah, kind of around there. And I think regardless, this is going to be a really fun team to watch. Like, that's the thing that sticks out to me. Even though this team might not win it, we'll see how much they win. But I think there's going to be a lot of games that I'm interested to watch. I think all of them at least have a fun storyline, and that's always good to see. So yeah, always going to be rooting for the Sun Devils, and yeah, that's overall my thoughts on a very interesting and unique schedule.
All right, Tanner. Thank you so much for your insight. Always appreciate uh, hearing things from your perspective. Uh, and that's really all I have for today. I don't have any final thoughts. Really, I think we pretty much covered all the bases that I wanted us to. So thank you to each and every one of you that tunes in to the Sun Devils Insider podcast on a daily basis. You can continue to read both mine and Tanner's work on ASU on SI. And Tanner, thank you so much for joining me on another show today. And we will, as Tanner said, we will be back sometime soon to discuss the transfer portal class that the Sun Devils brought in. And until next time, thank you for tuning in.